Visit us for updates and shows at affinityextra.co.uk.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not necessarily represent the views of Affinity Extra.
Yeah. This is your boy here, Roger Moore, alongside
MisterMarkGee. What's good? It's been a minute. I've been just engrossed in. I just been engrossed with work and life, but I've been loving Ideologees so far. Actually, let's do a bit of recap. What are some of the things that we've covered? What episodes would you recommend to your audience to watch? Give the people at least 3 for those who are not familiar.
3, put me under pressure now. One of the ones I did. Number one. I think I liked the way the conversation. I must admit, there's some of the conversation. Obviously, as much as I like or don't like, I like the conversation when we kind of like broke down some of the where Kemi won.
Kemi, I knew Kemi would.
Yeah, Kemi, because you're having 2 different perspectives on Kemi Bandicott and why she thinks what it is. Not just from the fact that she looks in the mirror and says I hate you, from a perspective of what her party represents.
See, Kemi, you have a fan,
and it's not me. I'm trying to be. I'm claiming Nigeria more. I'm claiming Nigeria more than her.
Kemi, are you gonna take that misspelling of
yes,
anyway?
Listen,
I don't think she'd care. She's trying to be the British Prime Minister anyway.
Yeah,
she'll tell you can take that. Two more.
Do you think she ever will be? Do you think the public would vote? Oh, I'm not gonna start a whole new Ideologies. Yes or no? I can't see it happening.
So if Starmer and Kemi Badenoch ran an election, who would win?
Yeah,
I think a lot of people are upset with Starmer. I'm not a Tory, but I certainly am very upset with Starmer.
Yeah.
I don't like him. Sorry.
Cool.
I don't like him.
You don't like his vibe. Yeah,
I don't. I think there was quite a lot of much optimism when he came to power, but I think he's proven to be a massive letdown. And the recent local elections where we saw the surge of the Reform Party is proof of that. But he's saying, and fair to him, we've only been in the government for a couple of months. Give us some time. So you know what?
Yeah, you gotta give
him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's a slow cook. You know how some movies are a slow cook till they get to the good stuff. I was actually watching a movie like, bro, just get to the good stuff. And perhaps that is the message the Labour Party and the Labour government are saying, look, give us time. Because it does take a while to undo the damage done by the Tories.
Yeah.
But some would argue that in their undoing, they're actually doing more harm than good. But anyway,
I was going to say
that was number one. That was number one. So you got 2 more.
Okay, cool. Okay, 2 more. I think another one that I liked us talking about was when we talk about the Kiwi.
Guys, check that one out.
And I think we're just looking at it from a disrespect, like whose land is it? You know what I'm saying? Whose land, and do the original people. You know what I'm saying? Because I looked at a podcast just today about when it come to Umar, and I your favorite friend Umar, Umar, the Pan-African,
Dr. Umar Johnson,
Dr. Umar Johnson, but he's got a new surname. He's got a surname which is pushing more.
I didn't know.
No, there's a new one, but he's got an African surname. Ifatunde, So
Malcolm just had X.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But he's not over pushing that. He's pushing it for himself, but not pushing.
To be fair, Malcolm X did also have a full.
That's it. No, that's it. I think I get it. Because our surnames are our slave masters.
But I think that was a very good. Just back to back to our top 2. I think that was a really good one because I think in general, wherever you sit on the argument, it's really talking about how to negotiate, how we move on as a society
from international
context.
International situations.
And no matter where you are on the argument, that is a good discussion to be had. Let's look at the history and how do we move on.
You got Scotland, Ireland. There's a lot of ills against Ireland in the past. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just a black thing or native.
The shadow of empire, right? The shadow of empire. That some would argue is still looming with its effects and how we move past it. And just a brief summary, Some people are saying we need reparations, and some are like, what? It's like this, like my friend here. Yeah. But then also there's some who would say, which Roger would disagree. Yes, we acknowledge the disparities that have come as a result, but we see more demerits than merits as far as reparations is concerned. But we won't get into that. Yeah. Because that's not for today. Yeah. Okay, you got one more. One more.
Which one did I like? Oh, goodness sake, man. I lost my mind. I didn't come back. Which one did I like?
Did you like
Don't care me. You know the one that we did and we broke down the women. Is it feminism? We looked into how the party. We broke down. You was broken down a perspective of.
Is it the grooming gangs one?
And the grooming gangs one. Because that really opened up.
We saw it from a conservative perspective, but also we saw it from a very specific feminist perspective. That was a very.
It looked at the fact that basically conservatism is going on hard now, but it was on their books for the full tenure, and they did nothing about it until the fight. So they had so much things to do, and there's so many layers to it.
And the feminists were saying that this should be our fight. And that you know, the basically the feminists say this is our fight, and the Tories are just using this as the people on the right, like the Tories and the Reformed, are just using that topic as a means by which to kind of advance the authoritarian mode. That was really interesting.
That's cool.
But we've discussed immigration, we've discussed Donald Trump. We've done one on Barack Obama, and there is plenty more to come. So today we're going to do something different. Would you like to tell them what we're doing, sir?
Guys, right, so we was looking at current affairs, but it's so piled up because we've got so many things happening in this world, so many things to break down. But the one thing that's very big these days is actual leaders. The rise of
personal profile.
Personal power. We're not going to talk about debate about Donald Trump taking down the financial world of gain for the rich, but we're not going to go into that because I don't know if it's an ideology for that. I just think it's an ideology of greed.
We could look into the personal profile of Donald Trump.
In
fact, let's throw out.
What we get cancelled up by X.
No. So we'll do Putin today.
Yeah.
And guys, watch out because I think we're going to do Nigel Farage because the Reform Party is surging.
Here's the question though.
We're going to do Farage as well.
Farage is an interesting one because I'm concerned if we realize what we voted for.
Again, from an objective standpoint,
because he's winning votes. Yeah, objective, but I'm concerned anyway. You've got to be objective because you're the teacher. But I think as a people of African origins, I believe Ibrahim Traore is something big that we need to.
We could look into him.
You need to check out because for me the biggest moan that I've heard you say, and a lot of African people say, people that are first, second generation African or born in Africa, they complain about the poor. It's not about Europeans, it's about bad leaders. And when we have a good leader, they're celebrated and protected. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So, and protected by people of African, because we need good, as I said, apples, you know what I'm saying, or whatever. We need to protect them. Instead, we don't protect them. So,
but I think you also, I don't know, I need to look into that story.
I know you need to look into that, man.
But one thing I will say is that even in my particular country, being Kenya, because my Kenyan people, if you're watching, is that even in our political situation, there are some Kenyans who are really for the people, but also some who are against the vested interest. And if a really good figure like Traore, I don't know, I mean, I'll just take I need to look into it, but say, so actually, let me take it back to an example that I do know. Lumumba was a threat, and he was loved by the people, but there was some vested interest even within the Congo, which the USA and the CIA were able to manipulate in order to advance their agenda. In other words, in order for the West to do something in Africa, they need to have some allies
puppet
within
leadership.
the continent.
Yeah.
And Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba was ousted, and a dictator was put up there, was propped up there, namely Mobutu Sese Seko, who was a very bad leader.
Yeah.
But again, that's something that was
question.
The interest of the United States.
From East African perspective, just before we go into something total opposite, but Putin does affect Africa now. Because Africa is the new. Putin does affect it, and we're going to come into this. And this is a straight question. You got West Africa. You've got the lands of Nigeria, Ghana. These powerful nations that influence all the. I don't want to belittle Gambia and a lot of the other nations. You got Senegal, which is a very strong Ivory Coast, strong nation that connected to the European lords. So you've got these key countries that affect some of the smaller countries around them. Yeah. Just Congo, is it that? Because it's a big, strong, wealthy, but the not being stable, does it affect East Africa?
Yeah, I think
Uganda, Kenya.
Yes, if the East African region.
If Congo was rich, if Congo was a rich, strong empire, would you see the East Africa would be more advanced?
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is, I think step one, I think it's a step-by-step process before we see the resources of Congo possibly benefiting the entire region. It must first prove that it can benefit the Congolese people.
Which level the bomb is underway, but
because right now I can safely say that is not the case. Right? And so I think that is what I personally, as an African, would like to see, that the leaders in Congo are there for the benefit of the people, and the resources are used rightly in such a way that firstly the people of Congo can benefit before trying to forge any trade relations with the nearby region, because the East African region is not too far from Congo at all. I mean, you look at Uganda. So Kenya is here. Uganda is on the west, and on the west of Uganda, is Congo. It's not too far off. And culturally, we Kenyans, we love our Congolese people. We tend to find. You would find that in Nairobi every now and then musicians from Congo would come to Kenya because Kenyans love Lingala music. A lot of Congolese speak Swahili. And so when they come, it's like... I was going to ask you if the eastern part. I think a large part of Congo do speak Lingala. But again, I think yes, they might come to a point, but I think what we need to... There's much that needs to be done before the possibility of getting there. I don't think it's even in the mind. I think what is of concern now is the situation now with the wars and how and the really the vile use of those resources to benefit a select political class and not the entire population. That is something that we definitely need to talk about.
And this point, guys, just leads into, and we're not going to go into the Berlin Treaty because that's a whole other thing itself, So hence why, we've broken up languages and broken up people in Africa. But something that were highlighted to MisterMarkGee about, I said, listen, why Putin's important, because it's interesting, because after the Ukrainian war, well, as it starts and whatever, there was a very negative element of, how Ukrainians were treating African people and different things like that still. And then obviously the war was going on and whatever. And then obviously everybody is counselling Russia from a G, like the usual powers, the Americans, all the G, the typical traditional
the
G7
countries,
the G7 countries, the G9, G, whatever you look at it, the G countries. But what's been massive of late is Russia's been able to backdoor negotiate and create almost a separate, I wouldn't even call it division two, a separate, the BRICS thing, which he has led, and he's almost did a peace offering by showing, which is not the subject for today, even putting out their black images of Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Remember when he did that? Oh, you missed that one.
I don't
Oh, you know
think
that?
I saw one.
Oh no, shame. No. He did. Sorry. But the thing, he sided. He's almost put out going. He did that. I didn't know. I thought you would know that. But then for me, he's created the BRICS, and you've got the likes of South Africa.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize, can't sleep on Ethiopia. Ethiopia is the second highest populated country in Africa.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So you can't sleep in them. Yes, Nigeria's big, but that's a whole nother, I'm gonna get myself, me and Kemi we'll go at it again anyway, still, yeah. But I think Ethiopia, and is aligning to these spaces, and if you actually look at the destabilization in Sudan, yeah, you have got, there's a lot of gold in the land. Africa's rich, so he's involved with that, involved with India, involved in China, and almost setting a new club up. So I'm going, hold a second, Putin was losing 2 years ago, and everybody was pulling out of him, but now he's look like he's winning.
So and the reason why I'll tell you why we've decided to do this episode like this today. Because I think the question that I would like to pose to you, as we look into the motivations and the profile of President Vladimir Putin, we didn't. When we were thinking about what would be the next topic, we actually didn't start there. The question that we posed to each other was, bro, is the Cold War really over? Because what I will present to you and what I will posit to you on this episode, and to you, my brother, is that I don't think it is. I don't think the Cold War is over. I don't think that the war between Russia, between the Russia, which was formerly the USSR, and the Western world, led by the United States, I don't think that war is over. In as much as communism is done away with, remember President Ronald Reagan said, put that wall down.
Okay.
And Eastern Berlin, which was part of the USSR, Germany became unified, and then we saw the fall of the communist system, and the glory of Russia fell, much to the upset of one young KGB agent by the name of Vladimir Putin. He misses the glory that once was.
Russia.
And this is so. Let me explain a few things about his life story, his motivations, and why we are here today. So, a bit of a story, for those who are not born, and I wasn't born, but I've learned to understand it, is that the Cold War was an ideological war between the Western world, which was free market capitalism led by the United States, and then you had the Soviet bloc, which was Russia and all these Eastern European countries that gained independence. They were all one country. So it was the communists against the West.
Yeah.
And in as much as Russia and America were it was called the Cold War because there wasn't really much war between Russia and the West, even though they had nuclear weapons. Oh gosh. But there was also proxy wars around the country. You would have one, say, army that was pro-Western, and then there was another army that was pro USSR.
Yeah.
And so there was all these proxy wars around the world, and people were scared that this could eventually lead to a really big world war that could actually end it all. Thankfully, we're still here. The president at the time of the United States that was at the end of the communist USSR was Ronald Reagan, and him and his counterpart, the USSR president Mikhail Gorbachev, were able to help the Russians transition from communism.
Gorbachev.
From communism to free market capitalism. Now much upset too. Now, but now I just want to now look. Now that we understand the context, and now we want to look at Vladimir Putin. He was a KGB agent who saw the glory of Russia fall as someone who is patriotic. And basically, after Gorbachev came this president called Boris Yeltsin, who Putin won favor. Putin won favor from the Yeltsins. He got into the government, and then later he became a president. And you have to understand that he sees Gorbachev as a traitor who has caused the fall of Russia, but not only that, breaking the fatherland of the USSR into different territories. One of them being
when you say
Ukraine.
you say Gorbachev.
Gorbachev.
But it's Gorbachev. It's Gorbachev.
Is it Gorbachev? Okay.
Yeah, Gorbachev. Yeah, sorry, that's how we got pronounced back in there.
Okay.
So slightly old enough, I heard him when you say.
So Gorbachev.
And he had a big, massive, Gorbachev.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's how his name.
And so I think Putin misses the glory that once was the USSR, right? And he's also of the belief that all those who speak Russian should be one country. And the issue is that there's actually a large contingent of Russian-speaking people in Ukraine. Now, fast forward, the year is 2014.
Yeah.
And the Ukrainians have an appetite to actually be more Western and even join the organizations such as NATO and the EU, much to the upset of President Putin, now President Putin, who sees this as the West trying to their more influence
changing the front
to what was USSR territory. And this is why Vladimir Putin has waged war in Ukraine, really, because he's seeing the West as the aggressor, trying to take what was formerly Russia and make it part of the Western Bloc. And it is interesting that this is, whilst Putin is upset, the appetite of the Ukrainian people was that you saw a lot of people, you would see a lot of people waving the European Union flag and, wanted to join NATO and things like that. I don't remember the name of the president at the time when this appetite was really high, but he was a dictator who was actually had close ties with the Kremlin.
I remember. Yeah.
But then because such was the appetite for Ukraine forging closer relations with the West, that he even decided to step down.
But you know what, bro? You really are pushing something here, because you're almost now. I'm a historian when it comes to World War II and so on still. And you have the two, because you got Russia and America from World War II were people that was attacking Germany, the Nazis. Yeah, communism was one side, Nazis another side, and democracy was another one, American style democracy. Now, what you ultimately is going is as much as you said that Gorbachev kind of broke down communism or diluted it, like China's diluted bringing in capitalistic traits into the system. It hasn't been. What is the best way? It really says to you something. Is there it really creates an ideology conversation, communism versus, people say democracy,
communism against capitalism,
because it's not democracy, it's such, because they as far as I know, they've voted Putin in. Is that correct?
Yes, but I think time and time again, I don't think. Yes, Russia does appear.
You can dispute it, but people can dispute Donald Trump in vote. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same both ways.
But in Russia, even more so, because a lot of dissidents and enemies of Russia have been killed. There's no free speech in Russia. You cannot be in Moscow and say anything about I watched a documentary. There's so many rivals of Putin who have been killed. There was even one who died.
You're watching a documentary based on the lens of of capitalism. So you're not watching a documentary through the lens of a communist.
I understand.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. But what I'm saying is interesting how I'm looking at the map here, the BRICS map. Your BRICS map. It just reminds me of the East versus. Like I grew up in like 50 in a year's time on this recording.
Come
still.
on.
You know what I'm saying? And
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
But next June is my birthday, so if you're listening in, it's June, it's my birthday month. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So, but the thing is, I come from a time when I was younger and I went to a majority, if not everybody but me, white school, and a few of my Asian friends. A lot of talk was about, them versus us when it came from East versus West, you know what I mean? I grew up in even watching a lot of American evangelical movies and videos. Our focal point wasn't end times. Our focal point was if a nuclear bomb hits the earth. This is our reality. If a nuclear bomb hit, and people think, what are you on about, Roger? I actually lived in a time where it sounds weird. I was there, watching TV, watching the war go down. So like for me, but one thing I kind of grow up to look at and going, okay, and I've watched a lot of things on Russia that the communism in certain aspects was better for them. Right, that's how some of the people do see. And capitalism, when you look at somebody who is homeless in California, in LA, which has one of the highest rates of homelessness, where does, that's another side of capitalism where no one's talking about. People talk about capitalism who can afford a mic and have a communication, but if you talk about so for me, it's a kind of murky water. Is it really, is a Cold War about ideology? Or is it really about two characters? Like World War One was started by characters clashing. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? They call it ideologies, but is it just people making war where there's no war, making war? Donald Trump, all we know, he's best friends with Putin. We don't know.
So so your question is, if just to make sure that I understand correctly, is this war between East and West really about ideology, the power?
Yeah.
Now, I would say it's more power, and the reason being is because I don't think President Putin has any inclination to revert back Russia to communism. But I agree. I posited at the beginning of this episode that what Putin misses is the glory that Russia had.
It's powerful.
It's not as much about the fact that USSR was a communist bloc, but it's that Russia had a power and a glory that they have lost. And we're still seeing the Ukrainians trying to be more allied to the West, and the West even trying to welcome it and encourage it. Putin sees that as an aggression by the West, which is why there is a war, unfortunately, because the West is, and it's not about ideology per se, because I think it's about power. And so yes, let's put to one side, and though it's a valid conversation about the merits and the demerits of them, I think Putin is a Russian patriot. Putin was a inside KGB. KGB is like the CIA of Russia. For those who don't know, he is a patriot. He loves Russia. He has seen Russia in the glory days, and those glory days are gone. Which is why even him establishing this thing that you're looking at on your iPad called BRICS, it is a means to recover the glory and the power and the grandeur that Russia once was. So I think that's a very good question. I think it's more about power more than a glory than the nature of the economic system. And in fact, Putin would be satisfied is with Russia discovering the territories that they had once lost, a little interest with the nature of the economic system within his country's borders. I think it's just about it's just saying the West as aggressors. But here's a counter argument to that, is that the Ukrainians themselves, it appeared to be that they had an appetite to be more closely allied
to the West. Yeah. Ukraine's a big country, you know. You know what I'm saying?
But I don't think Putin has any regard for those people, because in his heart it's about the recovery and the re-establishing of the glory of his country.
So do you feel that if you're on the side of Putin, yeah? Now, I do see that the Ukraine is a world front. When I say world front, a world, it's like, you know, when you got a war that actually, like Vietnam, you know what I mean? There's wars that have been fought, which is a war for, it's not on the border of America and China, but they're fighting it out in Vietnam. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, sorry guys if I'm using war analogies, but
Vietnam at the heart of the Vietnam was definitely
communism against
capitalism, or even better yet, like we just discussed, it's against West.
Its
influence, and its influence as to who will be the influential powers that be. But now, what the West can do, what the West does is they sugarcoat their economic advances as we are the fighters of freedom, and democracy, and what the communists
stimulant packages to Africa.
But the people, the critics of West of the West would say that is just a sugarcoat to advance their economic agenda.
Cool.
Do you know what I'm saying? But equally also Russia. Putin is more, should I say, honest about it. He wants Ukraine to be part of Russia. He wants to recover the glory that Russia once had. Whereas America would say, it is not that we want the whole world to be free market so that America can benefit of it. Rather is we want freedom and democracy. Yeah. But really implicit in that is so that in much parts of the world, America can continue to exert its influence. Its influence.
No, 100%. Now I hear this. Now I'm looking at the map. I'm a very mappy guy. Yeah, guys, I love my maps or whatever they're still. Yeah, I'm looking at this map of BRICS. Yeah, and it's an interesting map. It's the BRICS and the United States, and we're looking at the members of BRICS and their relationship with the US. Yeah. Now, ironically, Africa, which was colonized by everybody but Russia. Yeah. Now, Russia doesn't have a active colony outside of its actual region. Yeah. Which has really helped to its demise of its power, because really it never had a base in Africa. It never had even though it's fiddled in Africa or had a say in the past, and it's got involved right to Cuba. You know what I mean? So it's had its forays in terms of, so they don't approach colonization like the Western Europe, the West has there still, you know. But with the Great Awakening of people that we've spoke about in other ideologies, like the native New Zealand people, like the native African people, there was a Pan-Africanism and a resurgence of people waking up and saying we want to take responsibilities. The fall of financial systems in Brazil and so on, it makes them feel like, hold a second, we're never going to get there if America's going to be on the top. You know what I'm saying? So Russia's basically turned around and used this naturation of, you've just seen the West try and cut us off. Let's do something different. So the people, the countries in the BRICS, let's start from the ones that has a negative relationship with America. As we know, Russia, China, and Iran, three strong countries.
Very strong rivals.
China's economy is ridiculous.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying? Now, so China is a silent, strong arm partner of Russia. You know what I'm saying? And they have a different approach to Russia. but they've got resources, they've got human beings, and it's fantastic. You know what I mean? It's human beings, but the ability to, they're the manufacturing hub of the world. And this is BRICS is not at the stage of pilot, guys. It's active, it's communication. You got Iran, which is, but you might not know if you please study a bit more in Iran. It is a very strong country in that region.
Iran,
yeah,
I think the hostility between Iran did definitely happen within the Cold War period. Because what the United States did was remove this Shah of Iran, and they put some pro-Western leader.
Yeah,
and then after that was the Iranian, revolution.
100%.
But I think there's more ideological and theological reasons that motivate Iran to be a rival of the USA and the West.
100%.
We won't get into that.
100%. The ones that have a bit of a tepid approach when it comes to the United States is Brazil. You know what I'm saying? Which is a massive country, a country that is fighting its way to success. Yeah, it has its elements which is hanged down from the Portuguese Empire. It has a very massive African diaspora, very mixed, a very, very, very country where left and right, and it's just at a stage of very which way it's gonna go, but it's full of people, full of life, and it's full of and it's got an opportunity there, but they can go left or right. South Africa is an interesting one because South Africa, being, I would say they're the boss of East Africa. Would you say that's your boss?
I would say they're one of the biggest economic countries. Yes.
So as a Kenyan, do you look up to South Africa?
In what way?
Like they're like where we want to be.
I mean, economically, yeah, but they also have their issues. By the way, I've been looking at their report. I mean, crime is high, unemployment is high.
How did Kenyans see? And now I know you maybe just about too young, but I remember apartheid. How did you see that from an East African standpoint, seeing the strong armness of white Africans in South Africa, even though they have strength in Kenya and strength in Zimbabwe, they had their owned a lot in there, and in Libya, they own a lot in these regions.
But I don't think the European contingent in Kenya is as big as say the
South Africa,
Zimbabwe, and Namibia. I don't think it's so. I think there's a larger contingent of the Afrikaner is a very
important tip of it's an important region for Russia to it's still got resources, even though a lot of resources are still it's got a lot of people.
I like that it's accurate where it says that South Africa has it's kind of mixed between it's kind of like they on one hand, you would see, say, Nelson Mandela, with say he was quoted by the Western world. Like, look at this hero. I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure even.
I remember when he came out.
I'm sure the late Queen Elizabeth was gassed to have Mandela. He was invited to the White House when Clinton was president. I mean, this is a hero, and of course, if I. Mandela was such a guy that it was a privilege for you to be visited by him, rather than you're just that little head of state. It's kind of vice versa, where I'm actually more, how can I put it? I'm actually more excited that you are my guest than you being. You are more excited.
About my guest. Cool.
Such was the stature of Nelson Mandela, right? But at the same time, South Africa, for example, so why are they tied with the ANC? Why are they tied with Russia? With Russia? Now, I don't know too much, but what I will say is, historically speaking, the ANC, which is the
African National Congress,
which was it was an organization that was part of the struggle against apartheid. A close coalition of the ANC, and I believe even to this day, if they exist, is the South African Communist Party. Okay. They are very close allies of the ANC, and in fact, what you will start to find is I think Mandela, even he himself, had sympathies towards communist figures like Fidel Castro, much to the upset of the United States. But but the United States needs to understand that the communist contingent in South Africa were very good partners in the struggle. And so, in as much as South Africa is a capitalist country, with that little knowledge, I would not be surprised if they also have their sympathies towards the East.
I think that's a very important thing for you to say that it's not the Afrikaans or the English that are pushing towards communism. It's actually the blacks.
Yeah.
So communism isn't a black ideology, like a black idea. Like it's not just there because Russian white people like it, but there are black people, black communist parties,
and the white folks who were anti-apartheid were very left-wing. A few of them you would tend to find them to be communists
as well. No,
and interesting point. Even across the board, what you tend to find, whether it's good or bad, I'm not gonna get into it, but the people on the left. Not just in South Africa, but the United States. In fact, a lot of people have exposed how the communists were trying to, the opponents of communism would pose that, in as much as the civil rights movement, for example, was a worthy cause to fight against racial discrimination. Implicit in that movement was the infiltration of communists. And of course, America being a very being the leader of the world, they found that very concerning, very, very concerning. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why, in as much as people would love Martin Luther King and all that, just as a side note they were very wary of the the communist elements. But and they would say that they are hopping on this grievance in order to advance their agenda of making communism more popular. So as to oust capitalism. What you have today is a lot of communist sympathizers in the United States.
I think being a socialist, you naturally align to a lot of the heart of it's for the people. They believe in equality and neutrality. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm just saying that as a person who's for the people. I'm not saying you're not for the people, but it's interesting how capitalism is all about marketing very well. You say about free market, is it free for who? You know what I'm saying? Because define what a free market is. A free market is it's what they call their market. You know what I'm saying? The free market is so we gotta be careful how we define it. But going from South Africa, which is fantastic, we're going to another land which is these are strategic points. You got a strategic point as the South. Now historically, guys, now again, I'm a history buff. Historically, economically, who ran the Cape ran the pathway into Asia. You know what I'm saying? Into the spice lands, into wealth, into that region. So you looked up South Africa. When you talk about the other route into Africa, into the rest of the world, Ethiopia. From Europe, is not just Ethiopia and Egypt. The Suez Canal. So Egypt, to get Egypt has a positive relationship with the Western world, its root is under French and English rule over the years. The building of the Suez Canal, the quickest way to move your military all around the world is to have the Suez Canal, which is one of the most chokehold. That Red Sea is a chokehold of that region. And if you go down further, Ethiopia does not actually have a port because it's landlocked, but it has to have great ties to.
Is it landlocked?
It's landlocked. Okay. And sorry guys, Djibouti, they have to go utilize countries like Djibouti. And because Eritrea has come after, is a separate country now. They're almost control. Them few million people are almost controlling Ethiopia, but Ethiopia is the second most populated country in Africa, and behind Nigeria, BRICS, and the part of BRICS. These are if you Russia now, you've got to get wheat and stuff from your Black Sea, You can easily get down that pathway Red Sea if you own the 2 choke points. Egypt and they're your friends, you're good. You can get to Brazil if you own the Cape quite easily. I'm not saying Russia's trying to take over the world, but you got these sympathetic spaces which allow Russia now to trade. A great strategic move by Russia. You know what I'm saying? Saudi Arabia.
And again, just to hone in back to the very beginning, that this is an initiative which is headed by the head of state.
So it's not no madman going, oh, you guys will hate it, come around here. It is, look at this map here, bro. You can see the strategy.
The economic strategy.
Geographically and economically is great. The oil lands of United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia that plug into Iran. You got these guys who sometimes have fights between each other. You're having them around the table. And listen, guys, the 2 most populated countries in the world is China and India. And both of them are on the table. And India, I salute Indian people. From when Queen Victoria said to you, I want that land, you ripped your land back and you now are a thriving nation. You know what I'm saying? It proves I'm not saying India is a perfect area. I'm not saying they've got no issues or far from it, yeah? But to have your space where you've got manufacturing, they've been buying companies in the UK. My dad used to work for British Steel, yeah? Which got bought out by Indian Tata, which is in the Indian manufacturing company. See, they're making big moves economically for years. And now they're at the table making demands. They've got their own phone companies. They're sitting next to China. They've got economical world and military power. So this BRICS now, I'm going, might have to go back and join the Ethiopian church, buddy.
and this shows. I think what we have.
It's not madness. It's method.
And I think what we have done, and at surface level, because we can go way deeper.
Oh, sorry.
Is to prove, just to circle back, is that the Cold War is not over. I don't think the Cold War is over because, it's over in the sense that. The traditional nuclear war kind of approach, and that fight out is over. Well, I wouldn't say the nuclear factor is not.
It's off the table.
It's not off the table because America and Russia do have the nuclear weapons.
Yeah, but so does others.
I think that the only element of the Cold War that I believe has ceased is the communism aspect. Okay. Because Russia is not communist anymore. It's not communist, It's not completely it's free market, quote unquote, but really it's the oligarchs who own majority of the free markets. It's true. I mean, and this is why you have this oligarch who once owned Chelsea. I think he sold it.
Abramovich. It got taken off him. He didn't sell it.
So basically, what happened? What really happened in the Soviet after the fall of the Soviet Union is that yes, there was privatization, but much of this resources was just split between this. And this is why and now they became well off and built empires. You can even, I mean, they have big, nice houses here, and you have folks buying football clubs, etc., etc., etc.
So don't you think there's oligarchs in don't we just call them different names? Millionaires, billionaires. Don't you think the guys who own American football clubs are oligarchs, but just in a different demise?
That's a good question, but yeah.
I gotta be careful. People might start coming for me. I'm just asking questions, guys. Please don't take me out, man. Please don't take me out.
Roger, let's focus. Basically, again, But
no.
Putin wants the glory of Russia back. It's just a brief conversation just to show you
how deep it is, man.
The Cold War is not over.
Yeah.
And Putin is really all about recovering the glory of the country he loves.
Yeah, man.
But obviously the human effect, of course, is unfortunately the war, the loss of life across both sides, Russia and Ukraine, and also as a consequence is the West and the Western Europe and Russia are at war. And another interesting thing I would like to point out is, as we conclude, is that before 2014, in fact, you would tend to see, and they failed, by the way, the Western powers trying to court Putin so that they can kind of be part of the the club, the system, the system. You know, you had political figures like the ones Angela Merkel, who was the German chancellor, like the German president. You had Barack Obama. You had the French president, Hollande. These are the people who are trying to court Russia into the international community because they see them as an outsider. And they fail because Putin is a dangerous man who has his own agenda, right? I think Putin would love the idea of putting the old issues behind. And when I mean the issues, the glory that was once lost, if there wasn't any sense that the West is trying to be more aggressive geopolitically towards where Russia is situated. But the fact that the Ukrainians have an appetite to be more aligned closely to the Western Europe, and worse still, that the Western leaders were encouraged by it, I believe that this was the motivation why Putin is now fighting back.
Yeah.
The fact that, because I think it is one thing that the Ukrainians are crying aloud that they want to be pro-Western. But it's also another thing totally different, the fact that the Western leaders were encouraging this. And President Putin, seeing all this in the Kremlin, it angered him. I was going to use a word that maybe was not appropriately, but it angered him.
Of course it will.
The fact that, and so for me, the Russia against, or maybe not called a Cold War, but the West against Russia, I don't think that is a tension that is over yet. It's just manifested in different forms. It is still a tale of power between the West and Russia, and this is why we are here today. And obviously that's why there's the war. That's why there's the war.
Yeah, guys, and I think just this conversation has really enlightened that that people just don't do things based upon just waking up in the morning and just do things. I think that it's a lot deeper than what we look at it. You know, strategies, BRICS is no accident. BRICS is a very powerful move. You know, as I said to you, do research that part where he released up images of Black Jesus just before BRICS was being launched, showing the Africanism of a Christian, of Christianity. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So no, great. If we appreciate you actually, bringing out them. He had all the images of Jesus that was in the Orthodox Church, because obviously the Russian Orthodox Church is an old establishment. As I think Christianity we would know it as is a really branch of the Byzantine kind of Christianity. So
very much to church history.
So for him to back that out, it's we do appreciate the truth, mate. But it just shows you that it's part of a great strategy, and the people who sometimes as West African descendants or West Africans, we don't see the power in East Africa and the regions of the Asian African front, as I would say, and he's understood the power of the Cape, which is South Africa, the relations there, empathize with the people there, and Ethiopia, which is a massive nation who, when it lands, has a massive army, a massive say, and they're building a dam there which actually controls the Nile. And guys, I'm throwing these thought processes out to people because you got to look at the world from a different perspective. We look at the world looking down at the Nile. We look at the world as a Nile flowing to the region, but if you look at the Nile from an actual land level across, it starts from this beautiful lake called Lake Victoria, and works its way down through many nations all the way down to so whoever controls the Nile high up controls so there's a battle now between Ethiopia now, who's building dams which could potentially affect the people lower down, which is Egypt. You know what I'm saying? And control their water. So because they're high up. So the power is there's so much power in the nations.
So what you're trying to say, or whatever what you're trying to highlight, which is very important, which is how the fight for power and resources by the global powers, how it has a large effect among the entire world, and particularly the context that you just explained, the African context, that the fight for supremacy between Russia and the West does have, it's something that I personally enjoy
exploring,
looking at, but also you are trying to explain to us, and rightfully so, that this power struggle has an effect with the people of
it affects immigration as well.
The power of the African continent.
Because immigration, when people complain about because people, you look at Nico Williams and his brother who played for Atletico Bilbao, were the first two black players to play for Atletico Bilbao. I'm thinking they only pick people from the region, but they travelled from, I believe it was Ghana, all the way over to Spain, literally across the Sahara Desert, risk it as a family when they were very little. You know what I'm saying? You know, risk it, that's actually giving them physical disability because of the way the countries are, which is a battle that maybe is so above their even country prime minister's level that it's actual the powers. Global power, the global context is pushed. So when you go moaning at the African person who is or the we call Middle East, but Asian people or even Middle Africa people who come into this country, and you're moaning about, why didn't they go back to their country? But you don't realize the powers that your context to it has actually caused a problem. So when you go in voting someone and have that viewpoint affects their whole nation. You know what I'm saying? So 100%. It's not about looking at the person who arrives in the country. It's about what they're running away from. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you got wars in Sudan right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So guys, we just throw everything out there. We took it out there. And if you do think that this is not connected to Putin, if you're really looking into it, guys, there's a lot of wars, proxy wars that are going on right now. Proxy war is something really important. And I think that you don't just get guns out of nowhere. You don't get AK-47s from Argos. The biggest gun, and this is not Roger giving you false news from some secret thing. It's a well-known. The biggest arms dealers are countries,
and this is why even the
manufactures them.
Just to conclude, I mean, this is why the Western powers backing the Ukrainian army as much as possible in this fight against Russia, who obviously the West would say that Russia are the aggressors. They are the Putin administration would disagree. But again, it's because of the power struggle, because the West, even though Ukraine haven't formally joined NATO, which is what Putin is afraid of, he doesn't want you, because that looks like then that means that
right in the borders.
And that's something that Putin would not like. So in as much as Ukraine haven't gone so far to join memberships of these European organizations such as EU and NATO, the possibility has angered Putin, which is why he has waged this war. And in turn, the West is backing Ukraine in this war. But it is interesting to see that we have arrived here, but it was not too long ago. You have to go back maybe 10 years ago when, these very Western leaders were trying to be friendly and cordial to President Putin.
Yeah, of course, man.
But we are here now.
Yeah. I know friends. I know one girl that we used to work with, Lola, man. Shout out to Lola if she ever listens into this, man. She studied in Russia for a year. And there's a big, massive. There was big African Nigerian, the Nigerians get everywhere. Nigerians, you know what I'm saying? There's a big, massive, what's their church called, the big one? Redeemed. Yeah. They got a massive Redeemed branch in Moscow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do they have, because I know, I could be wrong, but it's my understanding only that the Orthodox Church is allowed.
Nah, bro, they had proper Redeemed church, bro. I've seen videos of them.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was only the Orthodox Church. Because I've been hearing
I saw my friend Lola. They're singing with the choir with all the brethren right behind her.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But guys, also I just something to mention. There are a lot of people who have said about ideologies that you're going surface level. You're going really deep, bro. We only have 45 minutes to an hour. Bro. We could. I mean,
we do have families, so we can't get too deep because we don't want to get assassinated.
To look into Putin takes hours to get into the mind of, and also to talk about this global context. I mean, we could do a whole series on it, but this is just surface level stuff, and I hope you enjoy it.
Oh yeah, master. I enjoy. To be honest, guys, I enjoy that conversation there, man. Got off my chest, man. You know what I'm saying, and whatever, man. So yeah, blessings, bro. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you for watching the content we're putting out. Listen, make sure that you are liking, subscribing, and following us on all our social channels, including patreon.com. Make sure you're finding us on there to support what we do so we can support you. And remember, guys, be extra.